Hello, Watch Forest focus. Nottingham Forest complete their pre-season programme, having had 5-0 in 7 games, scoring just once after another stalemate against Al Qadsiya tonight. How worried should we be about lack of goals? How much will we read into all those clean sheets? Joining to discuss all that and the latest transfer news is Paul Morley, first of all. Paul, evening, how are you?
Good. Have a strange sense of deja vu. But apart from that, I'm all right.
It was another one of those games, certainly. Chief in Chicago, how are you this evening?
If it wasn't for this, that would have been a great recipe for a nap on the afternoon. But I had to watch it all the way through to talk to you guys. Otherwise, I'd be catching some Z's here.
It wasn't a good watch. We've had quite a lot of those. I suppose, I don't know, Paul, I suppose the big question that everyone's going to say is to what degree should we be worried? I mean, on one hand, I've seen other Premier League teams play friendlies and they've looked like they've got much more zip than us. But then, I don't know, I don't know. we could have scored 3 or 4 goals tonight. Our final ball was a bit crap, but we got into loads of good positions, and Igor Jesus maybe should have scored 1 or 2. So I suppose the question is, can we turn up and turn it on against Brentford, or are you worried?
Well, if you're looking for positives, I think we've kept 5 clean sheets in 7 games, haven't we? And if you think of the chap behind me over my shoulder, his mantra was always build from a clean sheet and go from there. So yeah, I'm sure I'll get pelters for trying to be positive in the comments. But yes, I don't know. How much do you look into it? I mean, we've had this conversation, like I said, feels a bit deja vu. We've been here before in the last few weeks. How much do we read into it? How much do we not? There was definitely positive signs, but clearly, and I think I mentioned this before, it feels like there's a little bit of a hangover perhaps from the creative side from the end of last season, where we obviously struggled to create goals in the last 7 or 8 games last year. So it feels like that's carrying on a little bit. And, who knows, we might be 4-0 up after 20 minutes against Brentford and forget all about it. But, yeah, there's definitely question marks, I think, it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I don't think we know the answer to any of them until we play Brentford personally. I mean, I'll put this one up for you, Chief. This is probably the one end of the scale, certainly from Lee. I'll read out for people who are listening or watching. Pathetic, Matt. I assume that's not directed at me. I hope it's not Lee. Absolutely pathetic. Fed up with happy clapping nonsense, thinking it's all okay. 1 goal in 7 is shocking at a level of football. Demand better. Wake up, in all caps. What would you say to Lee then, Chief?
I think Lee's got to chill a little bit. I mean, Gibbs White, didn't play either. Not that he's been great in the preseason, but it was a sleepy game. What was it? 25% full, 30% full. So it was just kind of this last tune-up. I thought they looked a little bit better, especially in the first half. I thought Hudson-Odoi was, taking on his defender a lot, looked pretty aggressive. So some positives if you squint your eyes and look hard enough, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape. But it is pathetic to have no goals in 7 games. So regardless of time of year and opponent.
Yeah, our effort in front of goal has been pretty abysmal all summer. But I suppose, I mean, we scored 4 goals on our last friendly last season, and then it took 5 games for us to get 4 games for us to get 4 goals. I think that was just partly how we are. I mean, for me, I found it a bit of a redundant exercise in a way, because Al Qadsiya I thought were pretty poor for a final game opponent. I don't know how much we learned from it. I mean, we know we don't score many goals. Our final ball, as I said, was disappointing. I didn't think we were tested too much defensively. Sells made a good tackle and Murillo made an unbelievable block. But I'd much rather have seen us play a better team. And if we can't score against them, Paul, maybe we should be worried. But I don't know. I'm just asking you the same question because people are just asking having the same debate, I'm sure. I don't know. Does it matter that we played a poor opponent and couldn't score?
Yeah, well, I would agree that it's really difficult to know. I don't know much about Al Qadsiya. I don't know much about the Saudi Pro League. Gets called all sorts of names, doesn't it? And how strong that opposition was tonight. I mean, I think you probably saw from the fact that we dominated much of the game that, we're not going to come up against that sort of team very often. Perhaps, in an early round of a cup, if you get drawn against a lower opposition team, that felt like it was the kind of level. Kind of think back to that Luton FA Cup game last year that we won 2-0 and managed to take a couple of chances. So, yeah, I mean, it's not ideal prep for sure. I mean, I think Fiorentina last week if we sort of go back to that game, I think they played Man U today and drew against Man U. So that's probably more of an accurate marker of where we're at. And I don't know who schedules the fixtures in what order, and who thought that today would be a good way to go into the season. Maybe the idea was that today was the confidence booster where we might score 3 or 4 goals, and that would take us into next week on a bit of a high. But obviously, if that was the case, then essentially it sort of backfired a little bit. So yeah, not really sure what to make of it in terms of the opposition. I just think, like I say, and somebody said it in the comments, I think I said it on here last week, pre-season's about 2 things. Fitness, feels like we're definitely there on that score. There's a number of players tonight that look really sharp in terms of liveliness on the ball and covering yards and that sort of stuff. The one thing that we're clearly lacking is confidence, particularly in the final third. And pre-season has definitely not gone to plan in that sense, in that, we're going into next week now against Brentford with 1 goal out of 7 games. And that means that Wood, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, etc., as good as Hudson-Odoi was tonight, if there's an opportunity like he had tonight, the one in particular where he was running their own goal, if he's in that space next week, what's his head space like in terms of, does he just get it onto his right foot and unleash a shot, or does he be hesitant and check back and look for a pass? And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You want players to take responsibility in situations, and it feels like you can almost foresee next week there'll be circumstances where people have an opportunity to maybe shoot, and they'll pass it up to somebody else, and that's sort of a byproduct of this sort of lack of confidence. I hope I'm wrong, but it just feels like you can almost predict what's going to happen, and we're having this conversation in a week's time where we've had opportunities in the final third and we've not been clinical. So, yeah, something needs to happen in the midweek. It may be that maybe there's a couple of new signings arrive, and I'm sure we'll get on to talk about that might stir the pot a little bit, and that might change the dynamic. But it's probably unrealistic to expect, even if we do get 1 or 2 in, that they have an immediate impact. So work to be done for sure, particularly in the final third.
Yeah, I mean, Hudson-Odoi got in good positions in the Premier League games. You want him to execute better than he did there, I think, but at least he got in those positions, and just that's the thing that was lacking. That final pass was really disappointing tonight. I'll put Peter's comment. Serious football clubs, Peter, do not sack managers in pre-season. So Nottingham Forest are not going to sack their manager, and nor should they after a couple, after some bad friendlies. We just hit reset when we play Brentford, and then the players have to answer the questions and the doubts that a lot of people in the chat have got. I mean, Ant is one of them. Thanks for being a member, Ant. Appreciate that. Where are the goals going to come from? I'm nervous. Lord, is that Gibble? I don't know. But thanks for becoming a member anyway. Appreciate that very much. I mean, okay, Chief, where are the goals going to come from? I mean, Chris Wood got 20 last season. Igor Jesus, well, he should have scored at least 1 today. Do you think the goals will come, even if we're not going to? I don't think we're ever going to be a team that scores 80 goals a season or anything like that. But will the goals come?
I don't know. I am a little bit nervous. I am a little bit nervous. Yeah, I am as well.
I am. So, I mean, all these questions and topics that we're discussing, we can't answer. The people who are really down in the chat can't answer them. The people who are really up in the chat can't answer them, because we'll find out when the Premier League starts. But sorry, I cut you off there.
I do think the goals will come. And I mean, if you think about it, you have Igor Jesus new. We've had Morgan Gibbs White miss multiple games, and the drama around him. And Doy's still betting in. I think it's going to take some time to develop chemistry with that front four, because it did feel like Chris Wood just found the space and got on the end of everything last year. And if they are trying to change up how they play a little bit, where it's not just a jailbreak to Elanga and guys coming on late, then yeah, I think there's going to take some time to develop chemistry. And maybe they're just saving all the goals for Brentford. So, it's like, it's one of those things in sports where it's like, it happens when you least expect it. Last year, they get absolutely pumped by Bournemouth, and then come back the next week and hang 7 on Brighton. So it's just because they're not coming, or it's like the past is not a good indicator of the future. I think they'll be fine. I think it might just take longer to develop that cohesion than anybody would like. And then I do think Forest the last couple of years have been guilty of playing to their level. So all the penalty shootouts in the cup matches against teams from lower divisions, it's, it's a bad habit But I do think that they kind of look at the opponent, they get up for Liverpool, and then they, struggle with Ipswich and Luton and teams like that.
I mean, Kevin, I do think he's right to some degree. I don't think we're a team that's going to create a hatful of chances and score a ton of goals. The first game last season, the first couple against Bournemouth and Wolves, we kind of just looked very resolute, resilient, scored 2 goals, 1 in each game. And I do think it's going to be something like that again. And maybe we'd have to grind out a couple of 0-0s. I mean, that Palace game is going to be totally different and have loads of intensity to it. There's a point here from someone somewhere. Goals will come when players are more focused and want to risk more to get on the end of things. I watched a couple of EFL games today. They're chalk and cheese to this. They're completely different to what we saw. There was so much more intensity and so much more energy about them. So I do think pre-season is a clear divide between the intensity of league games, certainly. But we can't get away from the fact we've scored sod all, basically. We scored 1 Chris Wood header that wasn't even a particularly good chance. It was just really well taken. So, yeah, we
They'll
can't.
Come. They have to. They have too much talent not to score. The goals will come.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to change my prediction. We'll do predictions on Monday. These lads have supplied them. My prediction isn't going to be swayed by pre-season at all. It's basically the same since before pre-season started. So that's where I am at, certainly. We'll get into the game a bit more. Chiefs mentioned Morgan Gibbs-White a couple of times. Morgan missed the game. Paul Taylor, the Athletic, tweeted a personal issue, nothing to do with injury. I know his fiance's had a really rough pregnancy from what she's been posting on social media, so wish them well. And hopefully all's well with her and he starts the next game, be Brentford, certainly. The interesting point from that, Paul, is probably team selection. Yates played in his stead rather than Sangare. Sangare came on after an hour, but what did you make of that?
There's a couple of things, actually. I think the fact Yates played 90 minutes, Sangare played only 30. I think also it's interesting how Jesus came off after 60 minutes and left Wood on. Is that an inkling as to what might happen next Saturday? I still think Sangare will start ahead of Yates next week. I think maybe it's more about preserving Sangare rather than showing his hand for next week. I don't know. I may be wrong, but that's my feeling. And just going back to the whole, we can't score. There was a number of times towards the end of last season, and we struggled to score. I mean, I think I texted you last week ahead of the Fiorentina game. If you think back to the last 7 or 8 games last season, we only scored one. We only created 1 goal from open play in the last 7 or 8 games, which was Wood's header against Leicester. I think the other goal we scored from open play technically was Morgan against West Ham, which was obviously a bit of a gift from the goalkeeper. And the rest of the goals we scored in that last sort of stretch where we struggled were all set pieces, either phase 1 or phase 2 set pieces. Having said all of that, one thing we've said, particularly again going back to the Everton game, which was the sort of start of the sort of decline, was if you can't win, make sure you don't lose. And at least we've seen that sort of resoluteness in all right, we lost against Birmingham, we lost against Fulham, but in the majority of the pre-season games this year, whilst we haven't scored, i.e. tonight being a prime example, same with Fiorentina, we've not let any in. So, if you think of those first 3 games of the season against Brentford, Palace and West Ham, if we manage to keep 3 clean sheets, I think we'd all now take 3 clean sheets in those games. And if we nick the odd goal here and there, that might mean we end up with 5-7 points in those 3 games, which I'm sure we'd all take given the way pre-season's gone. So, it's not all doom and gloom. And like I said before, and we'll get on to the makeup of the team with potentially 1 or 2 new additions between now and then might make the whole feel of things a lot different. So going back to your question about Yates versus Sangare, which I know I went off on a tangent on, I think Sangare will start next week. But if he chooses Yates, I won't have a problem with it either.
Yeah, maybe Morgan comes back in. And people in the chat are pointing out teams that are playing, really well and energetic in pre-season. That maybe is more equally of the concern to me that I don't even know if concern's the right word. We didn't play with much urgency through these games, especially in the final third. And I think that's a reason why we didn't score enough goals, because, we didn't have that zip about our play at all. But again, see if we can answer those questions next week. I mean, actually, Chief, before we go on to the transfer review, what about Sangare versus Yates and who starts next week? Who do you think should, if it is either of them?
Yeah, I think I'd probably still prefer Sangari at this point, but I'm probably closer to picking Yates than most of the internet and most of the people who follow this show. But it's like you just got to try with your strongest 11, and Sangari was that to start week 1 last year too. So it's like, let's see if you can actually stay healthy and give him a good run of games. And I still don't think we know what player we have in Sangari yet. So I think giving him a run of games with that schedule to start, I think is good. And then if he falters, you always have Yates. Yates is going to show up and do his job, but it seems like Sangari's got a higher ceiling, so let's roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Sangare or Yates, then it would still be Sangare for me. But I suspect it'll be Morgan, and we'll play the Fiorentina formation because Igor Jesus seems like he's going to be in the team based on the amount of minutes he's got, which is interesting. It's an attacking team that can't score goals, so we see if that happens. We'll talk more about Igor Jesus in 52 seconds because the first game is at home. If you've not been to Trent Navigation pre-match, then this is the kind of match day experience you would get.
Hey up me duckies, a quick rundown of match days at the Big Shed. We're open from 10, serving full English breakfast, teas, coffees and, believe it or not, beers. Father's Footy Quiz is followed by the lunchtime kickoffs, and the outdoor kitchen is fired up from midday, serving sourdough pizzas, burgers, hot dogs, pies and sausage rolls. Lovely. Pints start at £4. We have a great selection of cask ales and lagers to lubricate the vocal cords for a bit of a sing-song before the game. After the match, we've got some great DJs and live bands booked. So get your send down to the Trent Nav. Win or lose, we're having a booze. And if we draw, we'll have some more.
One thing that could have changed the conversation a little bit is Igor Jesus had 2 really good chances first half, I thought, Paul. Should he be scoring both or one, either of them, do you think?
Yeah, I guess you'd want your striker to convert at least one of those chances. Good positive signing that he's getting in the positions and getting himself free in the box and putting himself in with his chance to score. I mean, they're both almost identical, wasn't it? The headers from the penalty spot that both sort of drifted wide of the keeper's post. Good build-up play. One in particular, I think, Murillo, absolutely delicious pass through to, I think, was it Williams that then chipped the sort of, dinked it across for him. I think we at this stage, I think I said a few weeks ago, I think it's difficult to expect that he's going to suddenly come in and start, banging in a goal every game or a goal even every other game for the first, couple of months of his time here. It's going to take him time to adapt, particularly when we get up to Premier League intensity. So I think it was pleasing that he got himself in good positions. Again, come back to the whole confidence thing. I'm sure he would have rather scored those. I'm sure we all would have rather him, not one of those in the back of the net, and confidence is up and it makes a big difference. But I think if he keeps getting himself in those positions, then sooner rather than later he will hit the target.
I was going to ask Chief a question, but I think he's shouting at someone who's got a dog. I'll ask her.
It's my dog.
It's your dog.
It is.
Everyone's got a dog on this podcast except for me, I think. Chief, I'll ask you this one and see if you can answer it. Any worries about Chris Wood at all? He's got 1 goal in pre-season. He doesn't. How's he look to you in pre-season, I guess? Or your dog, if he wants to answer.
And he is a hound, so he can be vocal. Why don't Paul answer this question?
Why doesn't Paul answer that one? So, how's Chris Wood looking pre-season, Paul?
I think he seems to me, and this is only a personal opinion, that he I don't want to say struggle is the right word, but he's not necessarily seemingly enjoying playing in a 2. I know tonight Jesus was playing a bit more of a 10 and he was a bit more of a lone striker, but it just feels like when he's on his own up there, he can dictate a bit more of the space that he attacks, and it just feels like he has a bit more freedom to roam where he needs to. I think the other games we've seen when he's been playing in a 2, particularly with Jesus, it's kind of like he's been a bit non-committal of whether he goes front post, back post, and he's kind of done neither. So we only had a real small sort of insight into that last season when Nuno played the two up front against Wolves at home, when he partnered in with Taiwo and it didn't really work. So it feels to me like for Chris Wood to be at his best, he's a spearhead of a three with two wide of him rather than playing in a pair. And it may be that, I don't know, maybe over time, if Nuno persists with playing him and Jesus together, that he'll adapt to it. But it feels like he's not quite as I don't know what the word is, convincing or as kind of doesn't have as much belief in himself in terms of being in the right position when he's sort of almost sharing that role with somebody else. That's the way it feels to me anyway.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't picked him out for. It's not like he's missing chances. We just haven't picked him out enough, I don't think. I mean, like Dan Ndoye is clearly feeling his way into the team. He's looked bright, but those links and the things, the links we see with Nico and Callum isn't there with Ola and Dan Ndoye yet, and I'm sure it will be. 600 people watching. Do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. That'd be lovely. Just Chief, Chris Wood, Dan Ndoye, the links, all that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought Chris Wood looked a little bit clumsy today on the ball. He had a couple errant passes too. So it's another guy. He's built up enough trust equity with me that I feel like when the games count and he develops a little chemistry, those goals will come. I am wondering if we'll ever see Wood on the bench to start with Jesus, with Morgan behind him. I feel like that's a formation that we just haven't seen yet. And maybe that gives a little bit different look. And Wood maybe he's the late game sub when you need a header and a goal to either pull ahead or draw even. So we'll see, but overall, I'm not that concerned yet.
No, I think as the season goes on, Jesus will eat into Wood's minutes and maybe take some time off him. Those first 6 to 8 games before we play in Europe, I'm sure Chris Wood's going to start every one of them. Yeah. I'd be really surprised if he doesn't. It's more a question of is Igor Jesus playing off him or to the side of him or not playing at all. But yeah, I'm not worried about Chris Wood, although I do expect a regression. I mean, I'm not expecting 20 goals from him next season. I think that's a tough ask. There are a couple of other positives. I know people will say there weren't, but Olaine getting 60 minutes, Paul. I mean, we were worried that we weren't going to see him. He looked fine to me. Came off after an hour. I've got no doubts he'll be all right for Brentford now. That must be a big plus for us, mustn't it?
Yeah, massively. I mean, that's one thing that we've said in previous weeks is that's definitely an area of the pitch where we're lacking depth. I know there's obviously we'll come to talk about the Leif Davies stuff that sort of emerged today about potential signing, but yeah, having Ola in the team just adds so much in terms of balance. I mean, we've been playing different centre backs out in full back positions in the last 4 or 5 pre-season friendly goals, 2 or 3, whatever he's missed, and we just it didn't. I know not that we looked super fluid tonight, but he makes a huge difference. So yeah, to see him back on the pitch and playing 60 minutes and hopefully he's going to start next week makes a big difference for sure.
What's the tipple, Paul Morley? Ask Gregor.
It's a bottle of Malbec, an Argentinian Malbec, Tesco's finest. I think it's £14.50 a bottle. Sometimes during the week it's down to £12.50 if you with your club card if you get on the right day. They never have club card discounts on Friday or Saturday, so you've got to get in there early in the week to get your money's worth.
That's an outrageously detailed answer that I didn't see coming. But yeah. Other supermarkets are available,
of course.
Although we don't work for the BBC, so who cares? I don't know how much more we can say about this game, Chiefs. It's just one conversation. Is there any other player that you want to talk about that stood out positively or negatively or anything like that?
I think Murillo gets some stick for walking through preseason. I thought he was very good today. Great on the ball, very good defensively. That looks like the Murillo we want to see next week. I like the look of that Jair Cunha. We've never seen him too much, even as a center back, but I thought he helped in the press on that one play along the sideline. I think he looks like he's going to be a special one. It's just going to maybe take a little bit of time, but having him there makes me, I don't stay up at night worried about what happens when they have to sell Murillo, because it's like this guy looks like he could be another special Brazilian. Maybe not to that level, but it's a nice depth piece and a nice project for Forest.
Yeah, I really hope. I know Levi Colwell's got a bad injury. I really hope Chelsea don't come knocking because it's a season too early. So
now I am going to be up at night.
No, nothing. I've not heard anything on that yet. They signed Gerald Hatto or whoever it is, but they've said they're going to sign another centre back, and they have been interested in the past. Certainly, I just had a text saying, "Who pays £15 for a bottle of wine?" Paul Morley, Jesus.
14.50. I said 14.50. Well, it's Tesco. Every little helps. Every penny counts, right?
It's from Mikey, so you can now he knows your answer certainly. Paul, anything else about the game you want to discuss? I've got one more question on it, but anything that you picked out?
Just a couple of comments. Omar Richards put in a delicious cross towards the end. I know that the sort of perceived wisdom is that we won't see him anywhere near a Forest shirt come the league season, and people may well be right. But if we don't manage to bring in fullback reinforcements, then let's not forget about him. He has played at a high level. He's played in the Bundesliga. He played for Bayern Munich. Obviously, he's had a rough couple of years, but I'm clutching at straws a little bit. But if we struggle to bring in reinforcements, maybe he might be someone who surprises us all.
Yeah, I don't think it's that great that we've still seen. I mean, maybe Stamenic is going to be part of the squad. Maybe Richards is. It does show that we've got a lot of work to do. We'll get into some names shortly because we're going to sign players, certainly. Last question then on these games and pre-season, which might give you some indication of where we're at. What mark out of 10 would you give us for our pre-season then, Chief?
Say a 5, because they kept all those clean sheets, but it has not looked pretty hard to justify going above a 5.
What about you, Paul?
I was going to say 4 or 5. I think Chief has won me round with a 5, given the 5 clean sheets. So we'll go with 5.
Yeah, I'd say 5 because 4 for the performance. 4, yeah, something like 4 because we didn't concede any goals, so that's a positive. We didn't get any injuries, which I think is a big positive. I think that really counts. So I would bump. It's 4 plus 1 for that. Obviously, we've got a lot of things that we need to see in attack, but 1.95 from Gordon. A few 3s or 4s. Drop your numbers in. A few 6s. Stuart, thank you very much. £5. Appreciate that. Everyone needs to calm down. I think we'll be okay. Great work, fellas. Thank you very much for that, Stuart. Appreciate that. I did. Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to change my pre-season prediction based on that certainly. So, yeah.
I thought Gordon said he paid £1.95 for his bottles of wine.
How much?
£1.95.
Like the little rinky-dink ones you can put in bolognese and stuff like that.
I'm being facetious. Move on.
Oh yeah, sorry. God, some of these numbers are brutal. Andy's put a laughing emoji after that. Thank you for a 0. Right, let's talk transfers then for 15 minutes or so. A couple of interesting links, primarily Leif Davies. According to Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook of TalkSport, we're keen on the Ipswich left back. I haven't seen a fee attached, so maybe we'll have a little chat about that. I mean, Paul, good attacking player, probably struggled defensively in a struggling team last season, so he's not perfect, but is he of interest, do you think, for you?
Yeah, a couple of things on this. So I texted you before we came on air. One of my friends, through my wife and whatnot, without going into too much detail, is an Ipswich season ticket holder. And I sort of texted him and said, are we going to be taking Hutchinson and Davies off your hands? And his response was, you can have Hutchinson, but I want to keep Davies. So, which is probably at odds with the way that we perceive the pair of them, I think. I think come back to Davies, I mean, he, like you say, the perception is that he struggles defensively, but he's good offensively. I guess you could argue that that's probably the way we felt about Nico 12 or 18 months ago. And I know Davies is a couple of years older than Nico, but he is, I think, in terms of game time and actual first team experience, appearances wise, much of a muchness with Nico, 120, 130 appearances. So there's I think there's a player there that there's scope to improve. I guess the challenge that you've got, particularly in the fullback area, is when you've already got arguably, a fullback pairing that is probably in the top 5 in the Premier League. I don't think many people, even outside of Forest, would dispute that. And both of whom have signed new contracts. So position is going to be by default going to be a backup player. So they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to tick every box. And I guess again comes down to value in terms of, do you get, with Chatua and Maffeo and people like that talked about, neither of whom have got Premier League experience. And although Davies' Premier League experience arguably wasn't the best, he does have Premier League experience. So for me, I think I would be on board with that if the fee was sensible. And again, the question comes down to, is he the kind of player that Nuno and the coaching team could sort of, basically repeat the Nico copybook with and say, right, you're great going forward, but we need to do this, this, and this to make you better defensively. And all of a sudden, over the course of 12 months, he becomes a better prospect and someone who can offer us, stability at both ends of the pitch. So I'd be all in for it if it was a sensible fee, and I call sensible probably somewhere in the 10, 12 million pound bracket, I would think.
I looked on an Ipswich Facebook page when I saw the rumour to see what people were saying, and they don't want to sell him at all. They said that he was really struggled against Birmingham, because I know in our WhatsApp chat a few people watched that game, said he couldn't defend at all, and they did recognise that. They said that was a one-off. So he is going forwards, and he would be a really good option coming on off the bench. His set pieces are really good, which I think might be of use to us. I suppose I didn't realize he was 25. I must admit, I thought he was younger than that. The thing I wonder is if you were an Ipswich fan and saying what's he worth, they're not saying 10 or 12 million. They're saying 20 or 25 million. And are we going to go to that? I don't know. Maybe we are, but does that feel a bit steep? I don't know. What do you think about him, Chief?
I like him. I think when you watch Ipswich last year, I thought he was a standout along with Delap, and you never. At least I don't have like a firm understanding of what they were asking him to do, because they struggled to score. So maybe they just kind of gave him free license to attack. And if he's in our system, maybe he, with those two center backs next to him and Anderson, that maybe he looks a little bit better defensively than he would have playing for Ipswich. So I like the idea. I like him as a player. And they don't have a left-footed left back, so that would be a nice thing to add as well.
Yeah, we'll see how it develops.
Sorry. I suppose the question you would ask in terms of, from a comparative point of view, how would Nico have got on in the Ipswich team last season in terms of what would defensive stats have looked like, in that side? So it's really difficult to kind of look him when he's coming from a team that struggled so badly that you've got nobody tracking back, nobody doubling up, nobody helping out. That's going to have an impact on what your defensive sort of numbers look like, I guess. So, again, like we've said all along, you've got to kind of have faith in the recruitment team to be eyeing the right players.
Some of the Ipswich games I saw early season, they played like the lopsided defence with a right back who was a centre back, and Davies was charged with pushing on a lot, and maybe that gives an unfair reflection of all of his numbers, attacking wise and defensive wise. So yeah, I think it's one where the recruitment team must have seen something. He's English as well, which helps, but I think it all comes down to the fee. And as I think Chief said, the fact he's actually left-footed helps as well, because we do need some squad balance, certainly. A couple of other transfer rumours to talk about quickly. There was a bit in the Sun saying that we're in for Ademola Lookman again. I want to rival Arsenal for him and Inter Milan. I mean, he's a great player, Chief, but does it feel realistic if the guy reported he really wants to go to Inter?
Yeah, but wasn't it also reported that they don't want to sell him to another Serie A team? So it's just like they might be at an impasse. He feels a little bit beyond our reach, and it also, like, you just spent 42 million for Ndoye. You have Callum. It seems like that would be. I'd love to add more wings. I just don't know if the price tag for him, considering what you've already spent there and the depth you need elsewhere, is the wisest move, because he's reported to have a huge fee, correct?
Yeah, about 45. They want 45 million, I think, pounds, maybe. I think not euros as well, I think I read. And he's 27. Yeah. So you're getting into that stage where he's not got a huge amount of sell-on fee. I mean, he can play across the front line as well. He could play as a number 10, but we've got Morgan, we've got Igor Jesus, who seems to be number 10. We'll talk about McAtee. I personally don't see it, Paul. I think it's nice and it's exciting, but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Lookman a couple of weeks ago. I mean, great player. I mean, I guess if we're competing with, last year's Champions League semi-finalists, we're probably going to struggle to get it. Look, I've got a theory when it comes to where we're at with the whole transfer business. I know there's been lots of talk about it throughout the summer, and what I'm about to say, either this time in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to look like an idiot or look like a genius. So I think a lot of it is going to, what happens in the next couple of weeks is a lot of it's going to depend on what happens on Monday at CAS. And people might say, well, you know, it doesn't really matter whether we're in Europa League or whether we're in, you know, Conference League or whatever. But I think if I remember from your episode you did about Swiss Rambles figures, that just from TV money alone, that first group stage of Europa League versus Conference League is worth somewhere like 20-25 million quid differential, which in the world of PSR and amortization and wages and all that sort of stuff goes a pretty long way. So my thinking is, my theory is, my hope is that from a transfer plan point of view, we've essentially working probably from two lists, and all these links that we've been seeing in the press, whether it be David Luiz and McAtee and whoever else, or you know, and some of the other names, is that we're probably working from a list A and a list B, and depending on what happens on Monday with the CAS verdicts of whether we're in the Europa League or the Conference League, you know, someone's going to press go on one of those lists, and we may well be further down the road with a few of these players than we think. In that, if we're in the Europa League, great, we're on Plan A, and all of a sudden we can start executing on 2, 3, 4 players that fall into that higher caliber category that we have been linked with, that probably we've had talks with, maybe agreed terms with in the event of being in the Europa League. And then there's obviously the other scenario where Palace win their appeal, we're in the Conference League, and actually there's a Plan B, there's a secondary list which is slightly different, and we can start executing on that. So I do think that a lot of our lack of activity, or perceived lack of activity, hinges on what happens on Monday, because it's I say a 20, 25, 30 million, whatever it is, differential in PSR world is a significant difference in terms of what you can and can't do. So look, let's see. Hopefully we're sat here in week 2, 3 weeks time, come the end of the window, and Monday's verdict goes our way, and we've managed to bring in 2, 3, 4 really quality players, and we all of a sudden feel very different. And even if it goes the other way, we've still been able to execute on 2, 3, 4 players that might not quite be to the Luis and McAtee and Ramsey level or whoever it is, but we've added bodies, and we're well equipped for a season of European football in tandem with the Premier League. So that's my theory. As I say, I might look an idiot if none of that happens in a couple of weeks' time, but I've got a feeling that's probably where we're at in the background.
A couple of people in the chat asking about Johan Visser. It seems like he either wants to go to Newcastle. I think Spurs are looming. Saudi Arabian clubs seem to be keen as well. I don't think he's a factor for us anymore, unless there's something that changes quickly, obviously. But I don't think he's on the list. Someone in the chat pointed out that Adama Traore, oh yeah, it was Luke, wasn't in the Fulham squad tonight. So again, maybe something's happening there. Maybe he's injured and he's out for months, and that one's off the agenda as well. James McAtee, a couple of interesting ITK type Man City accounts on Twitter were saying that he was coming to us, but then equally I've just seen a report saying that Spurs are keen for him now. So now Maddison's injured. So again, as Paul says, we're in a holding pattern. Last one I'll ask Chief about. More reports, admittedly, about Yunus Musa saying that we're going to bid 26 million quid for him. So loads of midfielders on the list. I don't know, Chief. Musa's not getting a good reception from Forest fans online. Are you going to set us straight, or are you not too keen either?
He's not my favorite, but he's a good athlete. He's still very young. It's just like he doesn't really have a position. Like he can play as the 8, he can play as a wing back, right. And if you're playing like a 4-4-2, he can play out wide as a right side mid. But so if it's like a Nuno type of signing where it's like, I want to keep a small squad and you want to have a guy that can play 3-4 positions and for all these different competitions, I think it makes sense. And then maybe, kind of similar like to what I said about Sangare earlier, where it's like he's been in, the national team is a disaster. He's never really had a good run of games starting in a consistent position at Milan. So could he show more and develop here? I think that's possible, but to me he's a squad player more than anything else. But I think there's a player he can really carry the ball, so it's just where does he fit in and how often does he play? If he was starting, I wowould not feel great about it. But as cover for Anderson or something like that, I think that's fine.
Yeah, we'll see who we end up with. I mean, Douglas Luiz is one, Bidstrup's the other one who sounds sort of squad player-ish, high energy type player in that Musa bracket, which makes me think we're more in for those two than maybe even Luiz. I don't know what's going on with Luiz at all. So, yeah, I think that was the main bulk of the transfer rumours. Did you just put your hand up to speak?
I did. I'm like a mental police there.
Please step in.
Well, I think going back to what I was just saying, I think that's it. I think Musa and versus Luiz is a prime example of what I was just saying. In that, if we were to be able to have an extra budget based on what happens on Monday, then I think Luiz is the prime target. If we end up in the Conference League, then it's Musa. That's the thing. I don't think we're going to sign both of those players, and I'm not sure about Bidstrup. He looks like Scott Gemmell from what I've seen on the pictures, but that's the sort of situation where we seem to be lining up more than one player in the same position, which we're not going to sign both of them. But you've got, again, this is an example of plan A versus plan B. The one thing I'll say about Musa is I don't know how much about his AC Milan career. I do remember him from the World Cup in 2022, where he had a really, really strong game against England.
Yeah.
And he stood out. And I remember thinking, God, this kid's good. And he's only 22,
yep.
Right? So he is one that if we did end up with Musa, let's say, over Luiz for whatever reason, he's definitely got scope to develop. And he was a standout in that US team a couple of years ago. So there's a player in there for sure. From limited what I've seen, I wouldn't be massively against that, even if he's had a difficult couple of years. And again, you compare him to someone like Hudson-Odoi, for example, who at age 19, 20 looked the real deal, had a couple of difficult years, came to Forest, and we've all seen what's happened. So I wouldn't turn my nose up at Musa if that's what ended up being the eventuality in terms of an extra midfielder, given what I saw of him a couple of years ago against England.
Miles says, I live in Milan. No Milan fan likes him. There are better options, surely. Not a glowing review. I mean, I do remember, Chief, like when Paul says about 2022, when we got promoted, Cooper loved him. He'd worked with him before, and he sounded like a real big prospect. He was always in the rumours sheets for players. Has his career just stalled a bit the last 2 or 3 years then? And was he a big, great hope for the American national team at one stage?
Yeah, at one stage, it was that whole midfield. I think we peaked in that game against England. It was Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie, and I think everybody was pretty excited about the future, and it has just it's gone off the rails, and it's – I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the men's national team, but it's just like that midfield three against England seemed to work, and I feel like, in the middle of the park, I almost felt like we got the better of England in that game. So, and Musa was a big part of that. So I do think there's a player there. He needs some level of consistency. He brings almost nothing in the final third, and he'll have some shot attempts where you're just like, what are you thinking? So, but if you get him in here and he has, if he's a sub off the bench for the league, and then he's starting in cup games and maybe your odd Europa League game, I do think that he's such a good athlete, and he's a great ball carrier that he can be useful, but it's just Nuno's got to get a tune out of him.
Yeah, we'll see what names come out in the wash in the next week. I think, like Paul says, once that Palace result's in, and as we step up towards the Brentford game, I think we'll see a couple more. And then I think we'll have a busy deadline day as well. I know we said the other week with Lewis, it's got to be more busy than 12 months ago, because that wasn't so much fun doing 2 hours with nothing to talk about. But I think we will see a few more, certainly ins and outs before then. Just before we wrap things up, thanks very much, Nottingham Window Company, second sponsors of our Saturday post-match shows. Appreciate that. If you're giving you windows or doors in the East Midlands, do check out the link in the description. Right. Final thoughts. Anything you want to add? I don't know if this is your final appearance. You've both done predictions for Monday's show, which is our season preview. So don't spoil them. But any final thoughts before we go, Paul?
No, not really. I think pre-season is always really difficult to gauge. I totally get people in the comments, and I'm bordering on it myself, feeling a little bit despondent about the way things have gone in the last few weeks, and a little bit hesitant and nervous about what it's going to look like in the next on Sunday next week and in the weeks after that. But I think we just got to remember that Nuno's a massively experienced coach. He's got experienced people around him. The players have been together now. There's continuity. That's the one thing that we have in our favour massively compared to maybe a lot of other teams in the Premier League. Even the likes of Man United have added players and people gone out and spent money and got 3 and 4 players in. We have a consistency within our squad that very few within the league have. We've pretty much got the same 10 plus and Doi minus Elanga that played the majority of last season. So from that perspective, that's something to cling on to from a positive point of view, in that the players know each other. Obviously, there's Jesus as well. I should mention him. The players know each other. They know what the strengths and weaknesses are. And hopefully that kind of togetherness will carry us through the next couple of weeks until, as you say, hopefully 2, 3, 4 more bodies do come in that can add some quality, that can get integrated with the squad as we get into the Europa or conference, whatever it is, program that starts in earnest in sort of September, October, and we're bedded in for a solid season of I wouldn't say progression is a difficult one, because to progress from 7th is going to be really difficult, but consolidation of a top 10 team I think has got to be the aim for this season. And I think we've got all the ingredients to do that with 1, 2, 3 more quality players through the door, which I'm sure we'll get between now and the end of August.
I think you can progress as a football club without finishing as high in the league table. I think we can still make the right strides that we need to make. It's just going to be very hard to finish 7th. John asks, is there any word if we're scoring in training? John, if we're not scoring in training, then I'm absolutely shitting myself, because I'm sure we're scoring goals then. But even if we're not scoring them in these friendlies. So it's not that bad, I hope, certainly. Chief, any final thoughts from you?
The kits are great. So they're going to look good on the field, even if they're not scoring. The fashion will be great. But outside of that, no, I think they'll be fine. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and like you guys are saying, like the progression doesn't have to mean up the table. Last year there was that great montage of all the so-called experts around predicting Forest to go down. So the fact that they're no longer even considered for relegation is a win, and it's just about like solidifying this club and then growing it again. I'd love a deep cup run in any of the 3 that they're going to be in. So there's a path to success, even if it's not, Champions League next year.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I totally agree. We'll be back on Monday then with, like I say, pre-season predictions and previews with Temps, Pete and Mikey, but everyone who's a regular on the show, including Chief and Paul, have done their predictions, and I'll do mine as well. Tuesday with Seb Hutchinson, then Wednesday and Thursday in 2 parts, all our opposition fans with their predictions to see how they're feeling. And some of them are feeling pretty miserable about their teams, let me tell you. So do check that out. And then Friday will be our actual first match preview for Brentford, when we'll learn a lot from that game, hopefully a positive outcome in that one. And we'll also have an opposition preview as well. So busy week ahead. Do join us for that if you can. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon, or a lovely 5-star review in Apple or Spotify. I'll read the comments on this podcast tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be people absolutely battering us and people totally agreeing with us about how they think where we're at. But like I say, I just don't think we know, and we'll know a lot more come the Brentford game. But I'm still very optimistic about the 9 months ahead, or however long a football season is now. Paul Morley, thank you very much.
It's 12 months long now. That's how it seems.
It is 12 months, yeah. Isn't it? I know. Well, that's what my wife says, certainly. She is convinced it's 12 months.
It's definitely 12 months for you.
Oh, yeah. Man.
Yeah.
It really is. It's been so busy this summer. It's been ridiculous. It's been crazy. Paul Morley, thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay positive, everyone. We'll wake up tomorrow morning. There'll be a different tune on the radio. Groundhog Day will be over.
It will. Chief, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so hopefully good news tomorrow. I feel like I've been a jinx. I texted Matt when he asked me to come on. I'm like, looking forward to talking about goals, no goals. So I'm not going to comment on CAS or make any predictions because I don't want to ruin anything. But I think better days are ahead.
Well, better days are ahead. Yeah, send on that. Better days are ahead, certainly. So join us on Monday. And if we don't see you then, we shall see you soon.